Um, After a few announcements, fellow board member Elric will announce our speaker tonight. Thank you very much for contributing to the donation baskets. It's our main form of income, and it helps us to produce these programs and other programs that we produce in the community. Let me introduce myself first. Apologies. I'm Mark Iwanicki. I'm on the board of the Young Association of Western Mass as the treasurer. So I keep track of all of those things that come to us. Thank you again. Please connect with us through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. These are all social media avenues that you can connect with us and direct other people to connect with us as well. There's lots of announcements, and there's always a event that's created on Facebook for you to keep track of. And Facebook's kind of nice because it reminds you that you have an event coming up. So you can connect with us through there. You can check us out on our website, which is written right on the board over there, West Young. It's got an archive of lectures, previous lectures that we've had over the course of the years, and it's super valuable to get some really great information. I've checked it out myself, and I encourage you all to do so as well. We've got a whole bunch of these flyers that are on the table over here and the cart over there. If you would be so kind as to grab one of them and post them anywhere that you think someone might see them. The more people that we can get here, the more that we can have some healing, because that's what this work is for. This Jungian work is becoming rarer and rarer in these times. So I think you all know how important it is to find the thing that connects us all at a core level. So please take these and post them anywhere that you see that you think people might be able to see. Our next lecture will be called Alice in Genderland. It's transgender through the looking glass, and that will be Friday, April 3rd, 2020. So take one of these, post it, take a look at it. It looks pretty cool, I think, because I made it, so I'm a little biased. We'd like to acknowledge our videographer, Sky. She records all of these lectures and puts them on the website for us to enjoy. So she's available for hire, and she does really good work. So if you have a videography need coming up in the near future, please contact her, and she's right there. And she's very nice. I just spoke with her. So. As usual, our lectures pretty much go all the way through to the end, so if you need to use the bathroom, please just get up and go. I believe there's one on this floor. Yeah, there's a couple of them that way, and then there's one across and down. Thank you. Let me see here. Also, show of hands. I want to know, we kind of want to know where we're connecting with people, so I'd like to know where you heard about us or where you heard about this lecture in particular if you're new here. Actually, first, any new people here who've never been here before? Okay. Just call out where did you hear of us? Okay. Word of mouth. Anyone else? Emails.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Website. Any social media people? No? Okay, I guess I got to do a better job. So, another announcement, we've got two wonderful programs being conducted by our speaker tonight, Erica Lorentz. One of them is called The Expressive Approach to Dreams, and it's a workshop. It's happening tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. If you would like to participate, please contact Erica afterwards, and she will give you the details. Erica is also conducting a dream group called Embodying the Dream. It starts on April 1st, and that's not a joke. It's April 1st. And that'll go for 8 Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30. And again, if you'd like to attend either of those workshops or groups, please contact Erica. So, without further ado,
if we don't have your email address yet and you would like to be on our email list, I'm putting this on the table. Please sign up.
Oh, yes. There was an interview on Valley Free Radio. Did anyone by any chance catch that? It was with Erica. 1, 2. Okay. And there's also an article in the mag. Oh, you want to talk about that? Okay. I will let Elric do that. It's a perfect segue because now why don't I just introduce Elric for him to say a few more words and then introduce our speaker. So thank you all for coming. Wonderful to see you. Please talk more about this to people you know. Salon. And after, man, I got some wonderful coaches here. Thank you so much. After the lecture tonight, there's a group of us that go to Packard's Grill, which is on Masonic Street, to talk a little bit more about the things that we talk about here. You can talk to me after the lecture and I'll let you know where we're going, and it's a fun time. Just sit around, have a beer or a tea or whatever, and just talk about what we talk about here. So,
and they have great food.
And they have what?
Great food.
Yes.
And they give us a special room.
And yes, special room in the back, very quiet. It's not very loud, so please come and it'll be fun. So, let me get out of your way. Elric, please continue.
Thank you. My name is Elric Walker. I'm on the board. I have the great honor tonight to introduce our speaker, Erica Lorentz. I do want to say, first of all, that one of the first lectures I attended here with the Jung Association was a lecture by Erica Lorentz on alchemy, and I was deeply impressed. This is very, very difficult material, and there aren't a lot of people who have mastered it to the degree that Erica has. So you're in for a treat tonight. Erica Lorentz is a Jungian analyst. She has a private practice in Amherst, and she is also the president of the Jung Association of Western Massachusetts and our fearless leader. And she has been with us since 2011, I believe. She is also a training analyst at the Jung Institute of Boston. She has lectured and facilitated workshops throughout the United States and Canada. And she also has ongoing workshops in the Valley, as Mark mentioned. So please speak with her about that. I also want to alert everyone that there's a wonderful article in many hands this month. I will leave copies for you to pick one up if you'd like. Erica was interviewed, and it's a wonderful, wonderful interview. So please take a look at that. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Erica Lorentz.
Okay, is that good? Okay. So alchemy, it's very interesting stuff. I've dipped into it. I've taught this about 4 times. Once was a class that went on for weeks. Another was a whole day. Then last time I did 3 hours, and now I'm trying to put it into 2 hours. So we'll see what happens, because you can talk forever about this. It's amazing. And every time I dip into it, and every time I read more about it or listen to a webinar or something, I get a whole new hit of it. And this time I just sort of felt like I went to another level. So we'll see what comes out. Okay. Alchemy is like a 4-ring circus. You have aerial acts, you have elephants, you have dogs bouncing on balls, you have tigers flying through flaming hoops, you have clowns on the periphery, you have water acts if you're Cirque du Soleil, you have the ringmaster who's sort of on top of it all and announcing it and directing it, and maybe that's the alchemist. But that's what we're looking with. That's what we're looking for. So this is the world of the alchemists. The four water, fire, air, earth. We have the 7 planets, which is what they knew. This was done in, let's see, where is this? Okay, it's the 17th century. And then you have the phoenix, which is coming out of the building. You have the sun and the moon, which is the father and the son, the king and the queen. And then you have the alchemist laboratory. And in the back, you can see the furnace a little bit, the alchemist and his helper. And alchemists were male and female. And then you have Mercurius on top. And Mercurius is the main god of alchemy. He's the trickster. He's quite an amazing person. And here you might have the alchemist who is blindfolded, as we see. So we're talking about the inner world. We're not talking about outer world events. And you have nature. It's about nature. It's really about nature.
Turn it off because I thought that might interfere.
Is it on now? Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so alchemy is about paradox. Jung is about paradox. Alchemy is about change, transformation. It's about making the gold. But true alchemists did not think they were making real gold. They were making the philosopher's stone. They were making the true gold, which is individuation, which is becoming whole, which is becoming who we truly are. It's the opus of the work. And in this picture, we have all that, and then we also have different processes, different procedures that the alchemists would do. Coagulatio, distillatio, perfecticatio, solucio, sublimato, calcitatio, and there are more. There are many steps. And these are the operations that the alchemists would do in the laboratory as they were imagining into the process and having experiences.
Do you know what text that's from? That image?
It's in the 17th century. I don't know the text. Thank you. Yeah. So whoops, where am I? Yeah. So this is Mercurius, and Mercurius is the god of alchemy. He's the father of alchemy. He's an autonomous spirit. He's the father of all the metals. The alchemists, most of them were working with metals. Some of them worked with plant essences, but most of them worked with metals. And the metals came from the different planets. And Mercury is the father of the metals, and he was rejected by the patriarchy. He's the fiery, chthonic spirit. He's elusive. He's deceptive. He's the god of thieves. He's the god that possesses a client or one of us like a demon and then disappears. He does things to music in a lecture. He's the salamander. He's the mercurial fire that doesn't really burn. It's the spiritual fire. He's the son of Zeus, the father of Pan, the god of nature. He's the herald to Hades, and he's chthonic. He's the magician. He's the god of travelers. He conducts souls to the underworld. He's the god of commerce. He's having all kinds of mischief these days. And actually we're in Mercury retrograde, so this is perfect. Okay, so we also have, gotta go back, Mercurius, Mercury, Hermes. And we also see he has the sandals and the wings, so he's a messenger of the gods, and he also has the winged caduceus, so he's also a god of healing. Okay. So, different planets. The sun is masculine, the king, the silver is feminine, the queen, the moon. Sulfur, Mars is iron, Venus is copper, Jupiter is tin, Saturn is lead, Mercury is quicksilver. And so all of these metals were worked on in various ways, and I'm not used to having a clicker. And what I really got when I took another hit into alchemy this time is that alchemy points back to the primordial matriarchal world, which was overthrown by the masculine world of the father. And that's really what it's about. For the alchemists, I love to imagine back into medieval times or even before, and the perceptions and the relationships that they had that are very different to ours. I find it fascinating. And so if you take the medieval mind, and alchemy actually started 35,000 BC, if you take the medieval mind, the world was alive, the world was animated. The world, this is what they were working with. They were finding the spirit in matter, and they were working with it. They were helping to reanimate it, and the alchemists in Europe were doing the Inquisition. So it was really a counter-revolution to the Catholic Church that was saying that, yeah.
When you said 35,000 BC, what were you referring to?
3,500, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'll get to that. Don't worry. Yeah. Okay. So it was really a counterbalance to the Catholic Church that was basically saying you can't have a relationship to God unless it's through a priest. We own the relationship to God. And alchemists are saying, no, you don't. You can have direct experience, but it's through matter. It's through nature. So I love these alchemical pictures. They're just amazing. This one was also in the 17th century, which was the zenith in Western Europe of alchemy. And here we have Mother Nature. She's nurturing. And in the back you have the city, which is consciousness. But we're talking about nature. We're talking about getting to another level of consciousness. And you have the animals. Nature is very much a part of this. Jung speculated that probably the unconscious has a material aspect, which would be why it knows matter. If this were so, then there would be a dim or vague phenomena of consciousness even in inorganic matter. That's quite a thought, isn't it? Inorganic matter has consciousness. The Sufis said when the body becomes spirit and spirit becomes body, we enter a new realm of experience, which Jung coined the psychoid. We have subtle body experiences. So here is nature guiding the alchemist. And again, they're going away from the city, away from consciousness, into the wilderness, and the alchemist, look at his glasses. He might even be blind. He has to wear very special glasses. He doesn't know where he's going, which is what we're doing when we don't know where we're going, when we're having a psychological process. And he has his little lamp of consciousness that he's trying to light the way, but he's following her footsteps. He's following her footsteps. Alchemists believed any substance has its own nature. We might say energy, grade, or pattern, and that this existed not only in a concrete material plane, but on an emotional, mental, and spiritual plane as well. While alchemists maneuvered physical properties in our space-time world, he was also interacting with other dimensions characterized by timeless oneness. That sounds fairly spiritual, doesn't it? So here is the alchemist looking out into the cosmos. And the alchemist actually believed, it was believed back then, that there was a bubble around the earth. And the stars were openings, that the cosmic energy and the energy from the planets came through and came to the earth. So we have all the machinations, all the planets out there, and the alchemist is seeing into other dimensions. And we have the moon and the sun, very important, the queen and the king of alchemy. So let's stay with that one for a minute. So Jung, I believed, was destined to learn about alchemy. He wrote 3 books at least, and many articles on alchemy. And when he transcribed the Red Book from his Black Book journals, the Red Book is a beautiful book, calligraphy, of his journey into the unconscious. It went on for 4 years, and he carefully transcribed it into a beautiful red leather book. And he also did beautiful paintings. I'll show you a few of them. And so he worked on this book. He went through his journey from 1913 to 1917 after he broke with Freud. And then he worked on the Red Book for many years until he discovered alchemy. And then the epilogue of the Red Book says in 1959, it says, "My acquaintance with alchemy took me away from the Red Book. To the superficial observer, it will appear like madness. It would have developed into one had I not been able to absorb the overpowering force of the original experiences. With the help of alchemy, I could finally arrange them into a whole and understand. I always knew these experiences contained something precious." And the Red Book, this experience, was the Rosetta Stone for Jung. It's what he spent the rest of his life trying to understand. And he read mythology, spiritual traditions, everything he could get his hands on, fairy tales, folk tales, philosophy. Albeit he was an incredibly well-read man. But Jung had experienced connection with alchemy since he was 15. When he was 15, he had an imagination that he lived in a castle. And there was a copper column or big column cable running from the battlements to the basement where there was a laboratory. And Jung was making gold in this fantasy out of a mysterious substance which the copper cable drew down from the cosmos, out of the air. And copper has to do with Venus. Copper has to do with Aphrodite. And then in 2012, when he wrote the thing about what takes us to the maternal primordial world, that was in 2012, which was the book that separated him from Freud. So he was writing about this in 2012 before he knew anything about it.
1912.
19. Oh, that's an interesting slip. All right. Like I said, invite Mercury in. Okay, so in 2012 he had a number of dreams. Oh well, you know what I mean. 1912 he had a number of dreams. One, he was on the Italian. He was in Italy in a tower, and he was sitting in a gold Renaissance chair. And in front of him was this beautiful emerald table. And his children were there too. And a white bird descended and became a little girl who was 8 years old. And she ran off with the children, and they were playing. And then she had gold blonde hair, and she came back, and she put her arms around Jung's neck, and then she vanished. And a voice said, "Only in the wee hours of the night can I transform myself into a human being, while the male dove is busy with the 12 dead." And he had quite an extensive visionary experience with the 12 dead, which is the scrutinies, which is the end of the Red Book. So he had that dream in 2012, and the other dream he had, let's see, and then in 1926, he had a dream. He was in a library in another wing of his house, and it was very medieval in the 16th, 17th century. And there were some embellished copper engravings with symbols, which later he knew were alchemical. He didn't know alchemical symbols. It wasn't until later. And the green emerald table in the first dream is the 800 CE, is the first relic we have from alchemy, of alchemical symbols that are written on it. So he didn't know about that. What?
It was on an emerald table.
Yes, it was an emerald table. Yes. So that's the other dream he had. And then, let's see. And then in, another 1926 dream. He was on the Italian front, driving back in a horse-drawn wagon with a peasant. And they go over a bridge and through a tunnel, and then they drive into a courtyard. And the gates slam shut. And the peasant says, I guess we're trapped. Here we are, we're trapped. We're caught in the 17th century. Notice the 17th century. That was the height, that was the zenith of alchemy in Europe. And Jung said, now we shall be caught for years, but we'll get out someday. And that was 2 years before Richard Wilhelm, who translated the I Ching, sent Jung a copy that he had translated of The Secret of the Golden Flower, which he wrote, and which he wrote a preface to. And it's a Chinese alchemical book. And that was the first book that he got of alchemy. And he was fascinated by it. And then, so he started collecting alchemical books. And he would open them and he'd go, I don't understand any of this. This is nonsense. And he'd put it away. But the symbols kept drawing him. He kept being curious about them. And he finally began reading them and collecting them. And he finally began to see patterns in the symbolism. So, and so that's how he started. And Marie-Louise von Franz was a collaborator and helped him write his books. It was tremendous work. Mysterium Conjunctionis is 1,000 pages, and it's totally full of alchemical symbols that he goes from one tradition to another and connects all these symbols. It's quite an amazing work. I don't understand half of it, so I'm not an expert. I'm not sure anybody's an expert in alchemy. Thank you, Elvin. Okay, so let's see where we are. So this is the Splendor Soulless series. There are a number of series of beautiful alchemical pictures. And this is the most beautiful, the Splendor Soulless. There's a whole book that Joe Henderson wrote on it. And here we have the alchemists searching for the treasure in the mountain, mining for gold. And again, you see the sun in the sky, and you see the moon boat in the river. And everything in these paintings means something, every single thing. The last time I did this, I went through a lot of them in very detail, but we don't have time. But so here are the miners, and there's a myth at the bottom here, and it's Queen Esther. She's Jewish, and she is being crowned by a king, and the king has decided to reject his queen because all she cares about is beauty, and she won't even come out and show her beauty. And Esther comes and says, please protect my people. Please keep them from being killed. There was an edict or something that the Jewish people were supposed to be killed, and she pleaded for her people, and he was so impressed with her righteousness and her courage that he recognized that that was the most important piece. And so they were both transformed by this experience. So that's a very important myth there. So let's go into a little bit of the history, too, of alchemy. So the roots were in 3500 BC was the earliest alchemy in Sumeria. And Egypt was 3000, China and Britain were about 2000, Greece had secret guilds. And they were originally, this really came up through the shamanic tradition, and through metallurgy, and through blacksmiths, we could say, were the first shamans. And in Taoism, the 4th century, the alchemists made gold their spiritual quest. And their meditation allowed the adept to return to the primordial state of chaos, the womb, the mother, to discover the secret of creation and regeneration. In India, it became tantric. It came out through the tantric tradition. In Europe, started in the 7th century, And it came from the Middle East and Northern Africa through Spain, that amazing confluence of Muslim and Islamic and Christian and Jewish traditions in Spain in the 12th and 13th century. And it came up through there. And and the Sufis talked about alchemy. They did a symbolic interpretation of the Quran, and they believed in a direct communication to God. And they're the ones that coined the word, the words, where are you? The mundus imaginalis. That's what we're working with, the mundus imaginalis, which is what we do when we work with our dreams. And so when we're going through an alchemical process, we're going through our own looking at the shadow, our own looking at our feelings, all of this, which I'll get into a little more. Okay, then the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Kabbalists, the Knights of Templar, they all were connected with alchemy. They all had aspects of alchemy. And the alchemists were very highly educated. They were very trained. They were the doctors. They were usually had patrons who helped them and supported them while they did the work. Roger Bacon was an alchemist. Albert Magnus was one of the most famous alchemists, and he trained Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas knew alchemy. And Thomas Aquinas, towards the end of his life, he was very ill and he had visions. And Marie-Louise von Franz, one of the early Jungians, did a whole book. It's called Aurora Consurgens. It's one of the alchemical texts. And he had these visions which she attributed to him. Other people say, no, that wasn't him. But it was about the marriage of the feminine and the masculine, Sophia. And at the end of his life, he said everything else which he wrote, he was an incredibly erudite monk. He had apparently a huge round table and 4 clerics, and he would talk to one cleric and they would write out his ideas, and then when they were tired and need to go to sleep, he would talk to another cleric, and he was so prolific. He wrote books and books, but it was all very codifying Christianity, totally codifying Christianity. And at the end of his life, he said, all of that is straw compared to this experience I've had. This is the real thing. So, Paracelsus was an alchemist. Paracelsus said, the purpose of alchemy is to make the arcana, secret remedies. And the alchemists wanted to find things to help their patients. That's what that's part of what they were looking for. But they felt like it wasn't just physical. It was spiritual and psychological too. For all these things conform to the instruction and test of nature, since nature and man in health and sickness need to be joined together and need to be brought into mutual agreement. Compassion is the physician's schoolmate. Yeah. Okay, this is from the Splendor Solis series. This is wonderful. We have to be creative. We have to be open. We have to play. We have to be like children. We have to have an innocence. In the back you see the alchemical furnace. And then you see the alchemical containers on the mantelpiece in the back. They're the alembic. That's where they would cook the materials and do their experiments. And you see nature is surrounding this. It's all surrounded by nature. The butterfly, the transformations, birds of the air. Okay.
So, Erica,
Yeah.
the picture's kind of cryptic in a way. It doesn't seem obvious what they're about. Was that actually disguised because the alchemists were under the guise of the church that they had?
I think that's part of it. That was definitely part of it. I think some of their writing was disguised to keep them safe. But I also think they didn't know what they were doing. You know, they didn't really understand what was happening. They were doing all this stuff, and they were trying to transcribe it into some sort of language, so that, and there could be maybe, so other people could decipher it and understand it. So they were writing their experiences, and then they were also, in their experiences, they were also describing what they were doing with the lead or the silver or the whatever metals that they were working with. So it was very archaic, their language, and very symbolic. That's what Jung finally realized. It was totally symbolic. Yeah.
But I'm saying a lot of the talk about metallic kinds of things are maybe a camouflage for the spiritual transformation they're looking for.
Well, it wasn't a camouflage. No, it wasn't a camouflage. What it was, because they were having experiences as they were cooking these things and evaporating them and putting them in water and doing all these chemical experiments. It's like the metals had spirit. They were talking to the spirit in the metal. They were talking to the life in the metal, and that's one reason it's so archaic. It's so odd because the only way you can talk about this stuff is in the imaginal, right? I mean, that's the way dreams talk to us. So that's the only way they could figure out. It wasn't about just physical transformation. It was about their emotional, spiritual process. Does that help some? Yeah. But I think there was. I mean, yeah, they could have been holding by the Inquisition at any particular moment. Absolutely. Okay. So then when Descartes came along in 1619, of course, things had built up to Descartes, but Descartes came along and alchemy began to split into natural philosophy and science. And Western scientific rationalism began, which is where we are today. And Jung's call was to come back to the nature in us. And the last piece, in 1796, Samuel Hahnemann developed homeopathy. And that's sort of our little modern connection to the essences of these materials, both inorganic and plants and all that. Okay, so what they were working in was the alembic. It was called the alembic. And von Franz says, vessel is a symbol for the attitude which prevents anything from escaping outside. So when we're working with a dream or we're working with a psychological process, we want to really be able to focus on it and to be inside of it so we can come to an understanding that prevents escaping to the outside. Introversion, which on principle does not let anything escape to the outside. The illusion that the whole trouble lies outside of oneself has to come to an end, and things have to be looked at from within. That's what Jung saw in alchemy. That it was an outward, inward process that the alchemists were going through, where they could begin to understand their own psychological and spiritual dimensions and go inside. Let's stop for a minute and talk for a few minutes. Anybody have any thoughts or questions, like Joe? Yeah, Rick.
Can you say more about what they were actually doing physically, and how did that translate to some kind of an inner experience?
Yeah, you have to. This is why it's so fascinating to try to get inside the mind of that time. That they weren't just doing something out there. It was all together. It's like they were they were melting silver. As they were melting the silver, using various chemicals to do that, to experiment on the silver, it's like they were a part of it. It's like they were speaking to the spirit of the metal and the spirit of what was going on. That was the spirit in them. So there was a mutual relationship. This is really what I got on such a deep level this time. It was alive. They weren't just playing with Silver. Silver was alive. Silver was telling them about their feminine. Silver was speaking to them about qualities that Silver had. Does that make any sense?
Do you think we've lost that capacity?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not in this room.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're all here because we're interested in this stuff. But if you go to outside and, scientific rationalism is it's only physical. You have to keep it out there. I mean, physics, I think, has come to this because physics would say that the observer and the observed change each other. So that was sort of another level that finally began to come out from Western science. Yeah, maybe that helps. Yeah. Then,
It's not fully formed, but you talk about the split between philosophy and science. I'm just looking at the split between inside and outside.
Right.
What do they think outside is? Are they fundamentally different? And is there something alchemical that has to happen in the outside world? Like if you're taking this in and keeping it in, what is the outside then? What does you to the outside?
what?
Like, can they be interchangeable? I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
the outside can be inside and all that?
Yes, and I mean, I think this is very interesting, this quote by von Franz, is that in order to do the inner process, we may be, life may be giving us issues. We may have issues with our boss or our partner or our children or who knows, with the economy, with coronavirus, with the negredo that we are in this country, in the world. But we have to be in a relationship to it so that we can really understand it ultimately from ourselves, and how the outside and the inside are the same, right? Yeah.
Is this sort of like what you talked about before about the idea that there are living symbols that come up from the unconscious that we then in waking world relate to through symbolic activity to kind of make a feedback loop between the two levels of our consciousness? Is that kind of what the alchemists are doing here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like we have a dream, and a dream speaks very specifically to what's going on in our life. It's amazing. It will when we work with a dream, it'll say, this is the problem, and this is how you're dealing with it, and you might want to look at it this way. So it's taking the outside world, and then we are trying to figure out what is my relationship to my inside world and the outside world. That's what we're doing in analysis, that's what we're doing in therapy, that's what we're doing in spiritual traditions, really. Okay? Fair.
I believe that when they did the most recent book on diagnostics, and forgotten what it is they do every so often.
DSM-5?
Yeah.
DSM-5, yeah.
Yeah.
The mental health
There
diagnostics.
was a big furor around it because whoever was in charge of authoring this book wanted to identify introversion as a pathology.
Right. Well, we've pathologized everything, haven't we?
Yes. The Jungians and many, many others, thank God, were outraged at this, that this was the ultimate sacrifice of what you're presenting tonight, namely the inner world, the connection with the natural world as a symbolic experience.
Yes, yes.
And on and on.
Yeah,
Fortunately, they backed off and allowed for a much more balanced appreciation of introversion and what its purpose was.
Thank you.
And we obviously, thanks to Jung, have come here because it makes so much sense to us. And we have, in one way or another,
thank you.
found healing.
Thank you. Yeah. Is this beginning to make some sense to people? Because it's very it's very archaic in some ways, but we aren't used to thinking of the inner world as alive and as related to our true nature. What we're looking for is our true nature. That's what the philosopher's stone is. It's our true nature on a psychological and spiritual dimension. Okay? Did you have some thoughts? Okay. Yeah, Joe.
Just getting back to your earlier reference that Jung wrote the introduction to The Secret of the Golden Flower, and that was an esoteric Chinese text.
Yes.
But that book has nothing to do with metals. It's all about the transformation of the consciousness within, create subtle bodies that would give a person eternal life. So it had nothing to do with transferring the material things, or transferring the consciousness within.
And that's ultimately what was going on. Right.
I think
But it wasn't just, some people think it was just a projection, that the alchemist was doing all this, they were doing all this stuff, and they were projecting stuff onto, and I think there's another dimension to it, is what I'm saying.
And Taoist texts like Secret of the Golden Flower at that time were using metallic metaphors, things like Mercury, cinnabar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to talk about their inner experiences.
Right, right. And, but they were also doing these experiments, so they were very involved with it. They weren't just thinking about it or using them as symbols. They really, really experienced the metals as having spirit, as having...
I know in the London Society, they were actually drinking mercury.
Yeah, well, that can make you a little crazy, can't you? Yeah, go ahead.
So I've done a couple of sweat lodges, and so I'm not very good or knowledgeable about sweat lodges, but the idea is that you're taking stones that contain the original spirit of the earth, and you're bringing them into a tent, and you're releasing that spirit into the tent of the lodge, and you're then interacting with it and having your individual experience. Is that basically
Yes. So they were doing their own aspect of that. Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Thank you. Yeah.
Kitchen dreams are the closest thing. When someone is in the kitchen, particularly when they're cooking something on the stove, they're beginning symbolically. Alchemical.
Yeah, they're in the process. They're cooking, they're baking, So, yeah. Okay, let's go back. You had a question?
It's just, you said we have a history from 3500 BCE to 1700. From all places of the world, is there anything that links all these alchemic traditions, or is it a general idea that they're...
Well, there are books. There all of these areas in the world had alchemical texts. So, and the first one that Jung got was from Egypt. And he actually eventually gave it back to the Egyptian government because they wanted all this archaeological stuff that was sent to all corners of the world, they wanted it back eventually. Right?
I guess I mean more in terms of practice and belief. It's a widespread in a big range of time.
Yeah. There were connections. People would travel and they would get these, they would share. Yeah. Though you have to realize in every mythology, like China would have a different sort of dress on it. It might look different we're talking particularly about Western alchemy here. But yes, The Secret of the Golden Flower was a Taoist alchemical text. So yeah, okay. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the simple things. The alembic, this is where it happened. This is the alchemical vessel. And when I have somebody in analysis, we're in the alchemical vessel. We're both cooking, which is important. The client isn't just cooking, I'm cooking too. And Jung said nothing is going to happen in this room unless you're both cooking, unless you're both in the soup. And when we're working on a psychological problem, we're in the soup, right? We're confused. We have all these experiences happening in our outer life with our boss and our and the dog and some our childhood comes up, and we get triggered, and we, in order to cook this, we need to come inside and go, what is going on? Well, I want to become conscious. I want to learn from this experience. Okay. And so in here we have the coming together of the masculine and the feminine, and then on the top we have the new child that is born out of this, which is our new attitude, our new awareness, our new experience of who we are.
Do you know the 4 beings around the couple are?
I think those are the 4 evangelists. Yeah, and this is again from the Splendor Soulless series, beautiful series. And here we have the alembic, and you see the 3 birds. I am dressed in black and red and white tonight for a reason. And the black bird is on the bottom. We'll get to that a little bit. The black bird is on the bottom, and the red and the white bird are working the black bird. And around it, you see there's a lot going on. There's commerce, there's money exchange, there's the king doing things, there's all this activity. So when we're working with the alembic, there should be all this awarenesses and feelings and emotions and sensations that are going on inside of us. That's the alembic. Okay. And what are we cooking in there? We're cooking the prima materia. This is a painting from the Red Book. The prima materia. We're cooking all this stuff that we're trying to deal with. We have emotion about it. We get depressed. We get inflated. We get angry. We have a lot of energy. We have no energy. We have ideas. We have fantasies. And that's in the alembic. That's what we're cooking. That's the prima materia. The prima materia is mystery always begins with our inferior function, our shadow, what's in the dark, what's in the unconscious. The place where new life regeneration is found. Only what is imperfect can be brought to perfection. What is most repressed by the mind or feeling. Okay. And the prima materia is an unknown substance that carries projection. So whatever we're projecting out there, we need to look at it in here. Even the worst things. Unknown substance that carries projection of autonomous psychic substance. So this, you see all the different elements, all the very, very primal. We get into very primal places, don't we? We don't have a clue as to what's happening. We get very depressed, or we get very angry, and all of our instincts, all of our drive comes out. And then it cooks in the alembic. It's chaos. The prima materia, we don't make it. We find it. We bump into it. We bump into a situation in the outer world, and there it is, bang, in our face. And we're so upset we can't do anything. Like somebody makes us angry, but if they just make us angry once because they're an idiot, fine. But if we keep mulling over it, if we keep going, if it keeps coming up at us, somebody else makes us angry for the same reason, then we have to begin to go, why am I so angry? That's when we start cooking it. We find it. It finds us. Some of the symbols, it's the lowest. It's in the shadow. It's in the dark. The symbols: lead, mud, poison, shit, urine, salt, earth, blood, sea, dragon, Hades, cloud, fire, chaos, vessel of contradictions. So that's what we're working with. When we go into a depression, for example, we're really at the bottom. We're really down in it. And we can just sit there, or we can begin to imagine into the process that we're in, into the emotion, into the relationship that we're in. So we get eaten up. The 3-headed dog comes in, and it starts to gobble us up our consciousness. We don't know what's going on. We're confused. It traps us. It claws us. And here we have a a thief who's stealing money. It's really the part of us that we don't really want to know about. And this can also be if we admire somebody and we idealize them and we keep going, oh, but they do that so much better than I do. Oh, but he does that so much better than I do. She does that so much better than I do. You know, that's also a complex. That's also an issue because we aren't honoring our own abilities. We can't find it in ourselves. This is Peter Berkhauser. I love this picture. He was an amazing artist, obviously, and he worked with von Franz for a very, very long time. And he obviously had an issue with the mother. Don't you think? Here he is down here, sort of going, oh my God, what am I doing? And having this whole imaginal world where you have the serpent of the great mother and you have the claw, the primitive part that's grabbing the feminine in him, and you have the feminine that's just floating around. We all have to work on the masculine or the feminine in us. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, so let's have a few more questions. Is this about as clear as mud? That's the prima materia. Yeah.
If you can go back to the picture of chaos, at the bottom there seem to be words for each of the letters of chaos, which I can't read from here.
It says chaos. Oh, it says I can't read it either. Sorry. Niger is one. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Secretus, secret is the last one.
So in secrets.
I'm not sure if that's that's Latin or what.
Flat.
It's what?
Flat.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. Don't know. I'm not sure. Good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, that sculpture of Mercury in the beginning, there was a head underneath that looked like it was spinning or blowing him out. What was that?
Well, it's a good symbol, isn't it? Mercury's standing on a head. Mercury's standing on...
Blown out.
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't know. I mean, we can imagine into all these symbols and find our relationship to it. That's the most important thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's so many symbols in all of these that we can talk about for, we'll get into some more specifics. But anybody else? Yeah, Scott.
Question, so at the beginning you said, the purpose of the alchemists, they were trying to not transform true gold, but they were looking for...
Not real gold.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The philosopher's stone,
Mm-hmm.
individuation.
Yeah.
And if I understand, the Red Book was drawn from 7 black books. And
Mm-hmm.
after he finished writing the Red Book, he turned towards alchemy.
Right.
But the first text that he was given, The Secret of the Golden Flower,
Mm-hmm.
was that the catalyst
for
him
beyond
the dream that he had that dream?
Well, he had a number of dreams before that. Before the dream that I said was 2012, and 1926, 1928 is when he read The Secret of the Golden Flower. And he went, oh, this is important. I want to understand this. This speaks to me.
And out of the juncture where he said everything that I had rolled before this is straw.
That's Thomas Aquinas.
Okay.
That's Thomas Aquinas, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, maybe.
It's probably a can of worms.
Sure, well,
but
alchemy is a can of worms.
That's right. When I listen to this kind of thing, and we're going back to the primordial nature mother, and there were already people, the witches, the pagans, the heathens, doing this stuff all along and still are. And what's interesting to me is that there's this like heady, erudite book thing, and then there are these people who like are kind of still doing this.
Mhm.
And I just kind of don't know how to think about
Well,
both
the
of those
alchemists were doing it.
Uh-huh.
What Jung was trying to do when he started reading, when Jung read the alchemical texts, he went, oh my God, this is what my journey was about. This is how to understand what all these different figures I met in the unconscious. This is, and all the processes I went through, and all the dark parts and the inflated, beautiful, finding my spirit guides. This is talking about that. And so what he was trying to do was like, okay, I really want to understand this process. You know, I want to understand this process for modern people, so I can help people go through their deep, underlying, unconscious processes, and they're growing and they're becoming conscious. That's what this is about.
That helps, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to get questions because then I can really, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Erica, you said that some of the people worked with plant medicine.
Some of them did,
Do you
not
know
as
which
many.
ones?
What?
Do you know
I
which-
don't know. So many. I mean, an alchemist would work with so many, you know, everything. Yeah. So if you were working with plant medicines, you would have been working with thousands of plants.
There's like a whole sort of thing where you're talking about making an alcohol tincture out of a plant, then taking the leftover herbal chunks of that and burning them and adding the ashes back to the...
Yeah, who knows? I mean, we don't
That sort of
know
thing.
everything they were doing.
Agrippa has
Yeah.
some great references,
Mhm.
which I don't know.
What?
Agrippa has some great references.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
In terms of what's happening now, there's a lot of interest in psychotropic drugs,
Mhm.
right? Magic
Mhm.
mushrooms and all that. That's still been happening for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you ever
Psychotropic.
experiment with
Jung?
drugs of
No.
that kind? Never
No,
ever
Jung didn't, you know, he didn't need to. He was already having his visions and his experiences. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I won't get into my history. But never mind. Okay. So remember oh, go ahead.
I can't stop thinking about the series Breaking Bad.
The what?
Breaking Bad series where
Mhm.
this guy is a meth lab person who is transforming, you know, chemicals into meth, and it's a whole series, and it just seems like a dark metaphor of alchemy.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
I'd be curious to know if anybody else has thought of that.
yeah. That's, yeah. Okay. So remember the black, red, and bird in the alembic? Okay. So the initial stage is the nigredo. It's the dark initial stage. It's chaos. In this massa confusa, where we're all mixed up and confused, the elements are in conflict and repel each other. In other words, my view of myself suddenly doesn't make sense in relationship to something in my life. I'm in contradiction to something in my life, and I need to take it apart. All connections are dissolved. Dissolution is a prerequisite for redemption. So we have to fall apart to come back together. We have to die to have a rebirth. Okay? We have to be, I love Von Franz, she's so wonderful. We have to be stripped of every idea, intellectual concept, before we can approach the light. Just when the nigredo, that dark place we're in, is at its worst, a secret birth takes place in the unconscious. So here's wonderful hope when you're struggling mightily. And I think that our culture is in a nigredo. You know, we're in a very dark time. The shadow has come up big time.
And in denial at the same time.
Well, I don't think we're in denial like we were. I think we were in denial more before. I think it's becoming so visible. I hope. Just all of us. So, and the world. We're in a nigredo. Okay? And many, many cultures have talked about these phases of the eons. Okay? So, so this is an image of the chaos of the nigredo. It's a black cloud. It's confusion. We're bewildered. The cloud of unknowing. Can we stay with the cloud of unknowing and stay in our psychological, spiritual process and not have a clue? That's really hard. Because the Western mind, we want to fix it. That's what they want to do with the DSM-5. We want to fix it. We want to figure it out and drug it and fix it and whatever. It dissolves our defenses on a psychic body level. And so a new self-structure can happen. So a new birth can happen. And it's something that we experience over and over and over again. Here's the black sun. I love this image. So the black sun, I'm not sure whether it's coming up or going down. It's a little hard to tell. But it's in a landscape. Again, consciousness is way in the back, and everything's died. Everything's been burnt, as in calcinatio, or the water has evaporated. But if you see, there's green with little gold. At the deepest level of Negredo, there's a new secret life happening in the unconscious. And around it, you see all these butterflies and animals that have to do with transformation in nature. Okay. So we sit in that for a while and ponder it and fuss with it and go through it. And then hopefully we come to the albedo. After a long process of inner development and realization, the projection is withdrawn. Whatever we're thinking about that person out there suddenly is no longer out there. It's in us. And a sort of peace establishes itself. One becomes quiet and can look at the thing from an objective angle, we hope. So we haven't really fully embraced it yet, but we're getting insights. We're going, oh, I understand why I'm so angry. I understand why I'm crying all the time. I understand something. And we can look at it. We can step back. I had a client years ago who said, if I can just get an inch away from my complex, just an inch, then I can look at it and not get consumed by my whatever emotion is going on. Accept the shadow, that it enriches our lives, and affirm a new, healthier attitude towards pain and problems, new relationships to contents from the unconscious, and we can work with them. Active imagination. So we're not just in a passive relationship to it. We're actually able to actively close our eyes or do whatever and actually go into the feeling or the situation and have an imaginal, mundus imaginalis part to it. Yes?
Is this the red bird?
The red bird?
Or the white? Was it associated?
Thank you. The white bird. Yeah. The black bird was the Negredo, obviously. This is the white bird. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
These particular transformations, I believe, are associated with the sunrise and sunset. So the albedo is actually that time just at dawn.
Yeah.
When the sky, the horizon is gray, the sun hasn't actually risen yet. And the Negredo obviously is the night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And these are phases of the work. Okay, these aren't actually operations. This is sort of a phase where a lot of stuff is going on. As we know, when we're in it, when we're in the Negredo, we know we're in the Negredo. When we're in the albedo, and this is from the Red Book. It's a beautiful image of it, isn't it? So we have the golden dawn happening, but we also have the moon at the top, and the self, the biggest self, is in the middle of the tree, maybe cooking still. And here we have an image of, another beautiful image of the alembic and the peacock in the alembic. The peacock has the black tail feathers, but each black tail feather, black is the Negredo. Color is happening. You know, things are getting clearer, things are moving. Yeah.
What comes to mind with the white and the black is the yin-yang symbol.
Sure. It keeps moving back and forth, doesn't it? That's how we work. And notice there's harmony. There's music, there's feminine, there's masculine, there's farming, there's Venus at the top with Mercury. It's harmonious. It's not that working kind of image that we had before. This is an image that I love, Meinrad Craighead. The sound of the Rio Grande. It's the calling in the night. It's the lightning. It's the moon and the howling, and we're alive. Okay. The third the third phase, and there are other phases, but these are sort of the major ones. If somebody mentions this, you'll go, oh, I know what that is. So the rubedo. The rubedo, but in the sense of whiteness, one does not live in the true sense of the word. It's a sort of abstract, ideal state. In order for it to come alive, it must have blood, the redness of life. Blood alone can reanimate a glorious state of consciousness. Then the opus is finished. The human soul is completely integrated. At the end of our life. We go through these phases, over and over again. We have bigger transformations and smaller ones. So the redness of life, the blood, this is about coming back into the body. We're getting it in the body. It's not just, we're not just understanding up here. We're really understanding it on a different level. And here's one of my favorite pictures of the rubedo. Here's the black coming out of the mud. And he still has one white arm, doesn't he? He still has one white arm, but he's red. He's red. And he's being greeted by maybe his feminine spirit guide, some elemental being that is protecting him and giving him the red robe of the rubedo. This is when we really get it. We've been working with it, we've had insights, but we really get it. And she has flowers on her dress. And in the distance is like a city, but we're going towards it. We're going towards consciousness. And again, nature is all around. Nature is completely there. And she has the Star of David above her, which is the yin-yang. It's the connection between the yin and the yang. Okay? And the crown. Okay. So, let's talk about some let's see.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
About the transition and overlap between the three phases. Can you say anything about the subjective experience of that transition? Is there a felt sense that I'm in the albedo now, it feels better?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a real overlap period
Sure.
where it sort of feels horrible and better and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't just
Yeah.
go whoop, whoop.
Right.
That would be nice, but it doesn't happen. And then the rubedo is like we're integrating it. We're knowing how to do it differently in our lives. Right?
I have a question about the historical, so I presume this is from kind of an old text, right? This
They're all
illustration?
from most of these are from the
1400s?
in Western Europe, in Europe it was 13 to 1700.
Okay, so did they come with captions? What did it say, about
Oh, the
this?
pictures?
Yeah.
Well, this was actually the experience of the alchemists.
Okay.
They either wrote in very strange symbolic ways or they drew.
So
They painted.
because Jung sort of popularized the idea, bringing together that alchemy is a metaphor for psychology, it's a perfect metaphor for psychology, but they must have also been conscious if they had a language like this, or do we assume? I'm sort of curious what was said around these.
I don't know.
Things. Okay.
I don't know. These are alchemical texts that we've found, that have been found. These are alchemical series. Like I said, there are a number of series
Sort
of
of thing
different.
where you have oral tradition along the side of the book, so the book would be kind of your crypto.
Well, not necessarily. Sometimes they wouldn't have an oral thing, but it could be this or both, or yeah.
And you have a living practice tradition. Here's the handbook, which is
Yeah.
like a comic book that you get along as a
Well,
reminder.
Because you could
Perhaps.
see this as a mythology, if
It is a
you know,
mythology.
it's a- right.
Absolutely. That's what
But
Jung.
the alchemists were a little more precise about it, it looks like a code.
Oh, absolutely. As Joe said, it was during the time of the Inquisition, number one.
It's just
but
okay.
it's also, I mean, how do you put a psychological or a spiritual experience into language? How do you talk about it?
Yeah. I wonder, it just seems odd, they had such a precise kind of language for,
No.
or
No.
in the illustration, right? It's sort of consistent?
Well, that's what Jung found.
Okay.
That Jung began to see the patterns. He began to see, oh, there's this symbol used over here, and it's used over here, and it's repeated, and oh, that's how he began to figure it out. It was like he translated it.
Yeah.
It's like taking hieroglyphics and not knowing anything, and then finally beginning to find the key.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
So does that mean the albedo and the rubedo, are those Jung words, or are those words?
No, those are alchemical words.
They are old
Yeah, yeah.
words, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just wondering if, like, if we're in the Negredo, and, you know, I don't know how precisely we can see it if we're in the soup.
Right.
But I mean.
That's a problem in this grade.
Like, but it does feel like we're having an issue with being willing to dissolve.
Oh, yeah, we
I was
fight
just
it, don't
wondering
we?
if there's similar stuck points in every transition along the way. So like the transition from albedo to rubedo.
Sure. I think I've got it. I got it. Everybody, I got it, you know? And then you go, no, I don't have. What do I have?
I can't remember.
Right.
I'm wondering if we could, through our working of active imagination,
Mhm.
if there could be some help from the other side, like.
Absolutely.
Like
And
albedo to rubedo could, that moment, if we imagine it, could help us get through our dissolving.
Sure, sure. And also the alchemists really got inner health. They really were connected to us. I'm going to call it spirit guide because that's sort of the language that we know a little bit of. But they really did have messages, and that's something, you know, that we don't get at all. That they really were getting new understandings from the spiritual dimension, from the other dimension. Yeah.
I just have a question, and I'm still kind of formulating it, but if this is an extensive metaphor, this kind of material science or primitive material science is an extensive metaphor for psychological processes. My question would be, could you talk about what the personal question Jung was up against was?
No.
That this was the answer to it.
Sorry.
Because it seems like he was kind of discovering a religion or a religious set of correspondences in this,
Yeah.
finding this was like
Yeah.
law.
Okay, wait a minute.
I may answer
Yeah.
that.
Well, if you read the Red Book, he went through 4 years of a process, okay? Negredo, albedo, rubedo, you know, over and over and over and over again. And when he discovered alchemy, it was the most complete mythological map that he had ever found. And that's when he said, oh, this can help me understand the processes that I went through and map it. So then maybe I can help other people map it and make it easier for all of us to do this. Does that help? Yeah. Well, keep formulating your questions, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
I was struck by the frames.
Mm-hmm.
The lush frames.
I know. Aren't they beautiful?
And that in this one, for the first time, one of the figures is moving beyond the frame.
Mm-hmm. And it's also a mammal, you know, a very warm-blooded mammal, isn't it? Yeah.
And looking up
Mhm.
and moving out.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering what you make of that.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's a moving forward. It's a warm-blooded animals, big warm-blooded, not just little warm-blooded animals. And the gold, you know, all the frames have gold, right? The gold, the philosopher's stone, right? So let's move on because we could talk about this all night. Yeah. Trying to do this in 2 hours or 10 hours. Okay. So, new life appears spontaneously after the libido, our energy, is freed from the complex, from the issue we're working with. And we come into an embodied self. Embodied. Jung said nothing happens if you don't experience it in the body. Higher consciousness from nature and something nature alone could not create. Humans recognize themselves as a part of nature and try to live in balance with it. The living Tao. Living Tao. This isn't something abstract. Okay? But isn't that interesting? Consciousness from nature and something nature alone could not create. So it really is the work together of the alchemist and nature that makes this happen. Jung really got ostracized after he got very ill, and he wrote Answer to Job, which made it better. And he got really ostracized because he believed that God needs us, whatever God is. that there is a transformation happening in the archetypal level that is happening on the personal level, that they work together. So this is one of my favorite pictures of the Rubedo. This is Sophia. And Sophia is black, but she's white, and she's covered, surrounded by red. And she has green wings, the vegetation, nature, growth, change. She's standing on the moon, the dark Negredo moon. And she's opening her white dress to show us the caduceus, of healing, the red and the gold of healing. Isn't that a beautiful picture? This was back in the 13th century, I think.
Late 14th.
What?
Late 14th.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, late 14th, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of the processes, the particular procedures that an alchemist would work on. We can't go through all of them, but I'm going to go through a few of them. We're going to talk about solucio. Solucio, we're in the bath. We're melting. We're dissolving. The alchemist is being cooked. We're cooking in our process. We're in solucio. We don't know what we're feeling. We don't know what we're thinking. This is kind of what I feel like when I start studying alchemy. I'm in the bath. I don't know what's happening. But an important piece here that I love of the image, that you have to keep the bath, you have to keep the fire at the right temperature. If it's too low, it won't cook. If it's too high, everything will burn up. Okay? So when we're working with a process, that's why we might go into therapy or analysis or find some help to sort of modulate the heat or to modulate the cooking so we can move through it. And the dove, which is of course a bird of Aphrodite or Venus, she didn't ascend. She's going from his head up. Okay, so she comes from the alchemical bath. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So, and then you see all the flowers and the gold around, and the alembic is right here too.
So there's a reference to baptism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, baptism.
And the
Absolutely.
Holy Spirit descending.
Yeah, but this is interesting because here she's not descending; she's ascending. Isn't that interesting? So the birth is happening from the bath up, so to speak. So solucio is said to be one of the roots of alchemy. It's the universal solvent. It's the tincture. We're going from a solid to a liquid. We're dissolving things. Tears help dissolve things, okay? Anger has to do with fire. Tears dissolve. We're returning to the undifferentiated state. We can let go. We can realize that we don't know what we're doing. It's okay. We can sit with this. We can cook with it. We're going into the womb for rebirth. Can we trust that if we allow ourselves time and space and quiet, that we can be in the womb, and eventually we will be reborn. It's hard. We descend into the unconscious. Jung didn't talk about ascending much. We do that all the time. All the major religions of the world talk about ascension. That's one reason why Jung said, let's descend. We need to go down. Buddhism doesn't. Right. Well, Buddhism has its own down. But yes, the major religions talk about up. Jung said, let's go down. Let's go back into nature. Let's go back into the body. Let's go back into the unconscious. Because he felt like that's what we were missing. Yeah. So let's see. So this is what dissolves our fixed ideas about ourselves. I am this. I am that. I know this. I know that. So we need to let go of that. And it allows the energy to move. Eros can be an agent. When we fall in love, we dissolve. If we have somebody that we're working with that we know, we feel their love, we can let go. We can relax. We can get into our difficult places. It's about cleaning. It's about washing. It's about purifying. It's about the dew of the soul, which means recovering our feeling after a barren intellectual abstraction. You know, it's about coming into the heart. This is an interesting one. Inflation. Sorry, but I can't help but think about Trump. he's got this incredible inflation, and inflation can sometimes reach such an excess that it dissolves the personality. I'm just waiting for this to happen. I don't know. Okay. The collective mob psychology is a dissolving, isn't it? You know, in Germany, I mean, Jung went through World War I and World War II, and he saw this over and over again, that people's rationality, people's morality would just dissolve in the mob. So a teacher, a mentor, a therapist, a spiritual guide could be a dissolving agent so that we can let go and allow a new insight or a new perception or a new way of thinking to come in. In analysis or working with dreams, it's like a place where we can dissolve the misunderstandings.
In the picture, he needs assistance.
Yes, he needs assistance. Yes.
So
the alchemists didn't work alone. Right. They had assistance, and they also had a partner, usually of the other sex, so that they were working together.
The assistant has red, black, and white.
Yeah, there you go. Red, black, and white. There it is. And blue. That's another one. But okay. So if you're immature, if there's an immature sense of oneself, then you can dissolve in a bad way. You can dissolve in an addiction. You can dissolve by falling in love and getting lost in somebody else's world and being used or hurt or whatever. Having an encounter of the divine, having a spiritual experience can dissolve you. It takes you to a new level that you don't understand. Okay. Here, the king is dissolving. The old attitude, whoever we thought we were that's not working anymore, needs to dissolve, let go. And there's the sun and the moon. And here's the new prince. But the prince is, notice his robe? It's a little large. He has to grow into it, just like we have to grow into a new way of being or thinking or feeling. And there's a lot of flowing water, and here's the dove, and she's sitting on the apple which is Venus, and he has the scepter and the crown, but the crown is gold and black. It's not pure gold yet. Okay. And here's another picture of Seleucia. Here we have the masculine and feminine, the king and queen coming together in the bath. And she has a green wing of Venus and he has the red wing of maybe Saturn or Mars. But they're dissolving. The masculine and feminine is dissolving. And whatever our masculine attitude is or our feminine attitude, maybe they become too rigid and we need to work with that. Okay, some dreams, a few dreams. What are my dreams? Okay. Here's a man in his midlife who's going through a major life reorientation. He dreams, he sees the world in a great bowl, and there's a huge flood like a dam has let loose. And it's cataclysmic, it's catastrophic, and everything is washed away. And in the dream we flee. And some escape and some don't. Some parts of him escape and some don't. Then there's a new era, and the world is seen inside a great sphere, many levels connecting around an open center where there are living spaces and apartments and places where people are. And it's before it was night, and now it's day. And in the middle of where this building is, it's earth. So in the middle of the flood has come earth over the water. And this is when he was going through a major life reorientation. And late after this dream, after he did a lot of work, he had a divorce. So here's another dream. A woman caught in a monstrous sea. She's a strong swimmer, but she's almost exhausted and she can no longer hold out. There's a square houseboat like Noah's Ark that reminds her of something in her childhood. And she is hauled up half fainting by Dr. Jung. That's a nice one. And she realizes by finding Jungian work, it helped her to not be totally overwhelmed and go into a nervous breakdown of some sort. Okay, one more. Let's see. At the center, there's a center of a great city, and this person is watching a vast stream of humanity pass by, every type and description. So these would be parts of themselves that are floating by. And like a great river, and this person is fascinated, and he realizes that this is the dissolution of some very dependent relationships that they were in, that those relationships needed to dissolve and his dependency needed to dissolve. Now, Jung had some very powerful visions before World War I, where he saw Europe just flooded by blood, flooded, and animals and all kinds of things floating in it. And what he realized later was that it was telling him about the coming of World War I, but also about his own journey, his own dissolution of all of his intellectual self and all of his old ideas that he needed to let go of. One being this very, very strong masculine part of himself. He needed to let in the feminine.
Which in his case was like his identification of his masculine self was as a dry and clear academic, you know. And so he's like letting go of that, and the feminine side being his irrational self.
Yeah, he had a dream. It's interesting. He had a dream where he sees Siegfried in a chariot charging down a mountain, and an American Indian shoots Siegfried with an arrow and kills him. And he falls off the chariot, and it starts to rain. You get the imagery there? And so he realized he had to let go of this heroic, masculine, driven part of himself, and go. And the indigenous Native American, which is a very interesting image.
Do you know if that was before or after he was with the Pueblo?
After what?
He was living with the Pueblo.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't have the dates with me right now. It was an early dream. It was a very early dream, yeah, his own process. So, okay, let's go on to coagulatio. Coagulatio is about Saturn. You know, boy, is Saturn busy right now, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's been really in the astrology. It's about the Earth. It's about bringing together. We have a dream and we're working on it, and then suddenly, oh, it's coming together. I get it. It's coagulating. It's solidifying. It's about weaving the threads, finding how the threads create a new cloth. It's about finding limits. It's about being able to make boundaries and find limits, and being limited by our life, perhaps, even though we hate it. It might be necessary. It's about eating, about incorporating, about digesting. And it's about being real. Can I learn to be real with myself and others? It's the diamond. The diamond is the most immutable gem there is. It's about finding the diamond in us. It's about the Eucharist. It's about eating the sacred, taking it in. It's about lead. And this is Saturn, and he is dropping a ball of lead onto the scene. So he's bringing it down. He's pushing us down. Saturn is the taskmaster. He holds our feet to the fire, right? That's what Saturn does. And he's really working right now. All the creation myths, most of them, have to do with coagulation. In Hindu mythology, the gods create the world by churning. They churn consciousness into being. And in Native American, the otter or whatever animal goes way down and brings up a little piece of dirt and puts it on the turtle or other such thing. So there's a dream. A different man in a major reorientation. The dawn is happening. He's up to his waist in black slime shit to the horizon. It's the beginning of the world, the first day of creation in his dream. He thrashes his legs and churns. And with great persistent effort for hours in the dream, the ooze begins to harden and become focused. The sun rises, there's a drying up of all the water, and the earth solidifies. He anticipates standing on firm ground. So this would be a nice dream to have if I'm churning my way in a problem I'm trying to solve. It shows that it's going to happen. It's a nice prognostic dream. Yeah.
The stone, it almost looks like it's going to fall on something that looks like a chapel. It looks like something like a church or chapel.
Sort of like Jung's early dream, right?
Well, God defecating on
the chapel.
On the church, the Protestant church.
Yeah, it does look like it's on a church right there. Those crafty alchemists. Yeah. Jung, it's also about translating, say, our emotions into understanding our images. Jung said that when he was able to manage to translate emotions into images, that is to say, to find the images which were concealed in his emotions, he was inwardly calmed and reassured. So that's a coagulation. We work with the dream and the meaning begins to become clear. It comes out. It reveals itself. Here's, this is a coagulation image where the eagle, the eagle who's soaring is limited. The eagle is chained to a little animal, a little bitty animal on the earth to keep it still, or to keep it, bring it down to earth. So when we have some wild fantasy or some impulse to do something and it's not right, we might get chained to the earth somehow. Okay, and there's the alchemist.
Erica?
Yeah.
We need to remember that Jung's weakest function was his feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So he was happy when he could transfer or translate his feelings into an image. For many people, what they need to do in their growth and transformation is to translate the image into an emotion.
Sure. So that would be the solucio or maybe the calcinatio. Somebody might not need to coagulate, right? So we might be too coagulated. All these processes have the positive, we might be stuck in them, so we need something else. Or we might need them to shake us up. Good point, thank you. Okay, so this is a lovely dream. I was in the kitchen and looked into the oven. There was a beautiful roast, completely cooked, a little dry, a little overcooked. And a voice says, "You left it in too long, didn't you?" I acknowledged I had. This was an 82-year-old woman, and 2 weeks later she died. Isn't that a beautiful dream? She left it in just a little long. Yeah. So here's another image of coagulation to me. This is very early. This is like, what, 1900s or, the 12th century? These are the mystics, okay? And they're being pulled off the ladder. It's not time yet. You have to go back down. You're not ready. When we get inflated or we get in, how many people in here have been into a spiritual inflation at the time, okay? And suddenly it's like, oh darn, back to earth. I can't just stay in that beautiful place all the time. Yeah. Aren't these images amazing?
That's an ascension too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which we might need. If you're too stuck, then you might need to ascend, right? But I think as a culture, we're in our heads a lot. Okay, let's go to calcinatio. This is from the Red Book. You see the adept is down there going, okay, I'll let the unconscious burst forward. And there's the, I think that's the sun boat, the Egyptian boat that goes through the underworld at night, and then it comes up. That's the sun boat in the back there. So maybe we have too much water around, you see. You know, my experience is that some people get depressed and cry all the time, and they might need some fire. Some people have lead with fire, with anger. They might need to get below that to sadness or something. So this was early on in the Red Book, this eruption of the unconscious. And here's the alchemist. I'm going to read a little bit about calcinatio. It's an intense heating that will dry up if we're too wet, if we're too emotional, it might dry it up. And the mercurial fire is always fluid. It never totally burns. It's instinct. Fire is instinct. It's sexuality. It's passion. It's creativity. It's anger. It's desire. So we might need to find the shadow side, which harbors hungry instinctual desire. We might need to find it in the shadow. Everything's in the shadow that we're not conscious of. And fire separates that from what's fixed to that which is volatile inside of us. The blood is fire. Fire it was equated with blood. So you can become baptized in the blood. In Greece, there was what was the ritual where they were, and you were baptized in the blood of an ox. Do you remember that one?
It's purification ritual you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
from Temple of Ephesus. You basically, the bull would be placed over you, the bull's
Right.
focus.
Yeah, right. Baptized in the blood, which means to endure intense affect or an ordeal. To endure an intense affect or ordeal. So it's a drying out process. We're waterlogged. It can also be a liberation if we need to get angry, if we need to find affect. It could be a real liberation of that. So this is the alchemist, and you see he's being dried out. He's being these experiences or images or issues that he has are being burned and brought out in the fire by his assistant. On the spiritual plane, it's Kundalini. This is what the Tantric is talking about. It's the fire of the divine. It purges the ego. It can burn up the ego, but it can also purge the ego. It's experienced as divine inspiration. Now what's left after the calcinatio is the ash. Ash is what's left. And ash is part of the albedo. Ash is what we're left with when we've all burned up and we've done this drying out process of whatever's going inside emotionally or relationally. And we're left with the ash, which has been purified. It's what can become, it might have to do with mourning or repentance or coming to a new place. To be sacrificed by the fire is to make sacred. To make sacred. Okay. Let's hear some dreams. Anybody have any thoughts or questions?
The Mercury standing on the head is similar to Shiva, standing on that
right.
Ego or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
In the previous image, what are the people doing in the background? What's happening?
I'm not sure. It's another alchemist. Looks like he's checking his eye.
In the shades.
Or
What?
I wonder how.
What?
Oh, he says he's pouring something into the mouth with a funnel. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's another operation happening in the background.
I can't help but think that that person inside the crucible like that is probably what Jung felt like while the Red Book was being written.
What Jung felt when?
When he was going through the process of the Red Book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all these images, oh God.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was going through so many of these processes, wasn't he? You know, he was meeting all kinds of aspects of his psyche and spiritual guides and devils, and it was quite intense. So, here's a dream. A woman is bending over a cauldron, and she's holding a ball of fire in her hands, and with nonchalance, no panic or harm, she holds and shapes and squeezes this ball of fire as though it's laundry. The dreamer watches with amazement. And she connected this woman with a Navajo woman that she had seen on some reservation who was making bread. And this dream, she was about to embark on a great major creative project, and so she felt like this was a really wonderful portent to what was going to happen with her creative project. She felt affirmed to go ahead. So another one is a young research scientist who's very brilliant, has just formulated an important discovery. And his professor belittles him. And so, but he replies in great intensity back. And the professor admits he's wrong and apologizes. So this is the dream he had. Excuse me. I am sitting at dinner at a dinner table with guests. Something spills and catches fire on the table. The table is covered with little flames shifting about. It's a beautiful sight. And he awakens thinking of the Pentecost, these little inspirations, these little fire, the Pentecost, the Holy Spirit, the tongues of fire, the creative fire, all of this amazing intellectual, creative process that he was in, that the professor had put down, and it affirmed him. Here's another one. A star enters her room. It's the grandmother. It's her grandmother. She offers her shaman's drum and drumsticks from this woman's child dream. And the drum has red cloth streamers on it, like fire. The grandmother says, "Do not be afraid. The fire is your fire. The creativity is your creativity. Trust it." Okay. Uh-oh. We better get on to Conjunctio. Okay. Conjunctio. This is the last one I'll talk about this evening. So Conjunctio takes place in the underworld in the new moon. There's something born in the dark unconscious. This is a beautiful picture of the spiritual connection with the self and the connection between the male and the female part of ourselves. In alchemy, the uniting of the soul with the body is the miracle of the Conjunctio, by which the lapis, or the philosopher's stone, becomes the living body. The phoenix signifies precisely this moment when we have reemerged, when we're coming up from the ashes. So some of the images of Conjunctio might be gum or glue, something that brings things together, resin, a transforming substance. And so there are different kinds of conjunctios. One is a great conjunctio, which we might have a real awakened experience, a spiritual experience. And the others, we're always having conjunctios when the opposites were working with the judge in us and the rebel and the judge and the rebel and the judge and the rebel, and we're really getting to know these parts of ourselves. And finally they begin to come together. There's a marriage, there's a sacred marriage, and a new awareness, a new attitude is born out of that, where then we aren't pulled by either the judge or the rebel in us. And here's a process of conjunctio. Here we have the king and the queen, the masculine and feminine principles. And the soul is going up to heaven. The soul is going away as this process is happening. And then the dew which portends a new birth, comes. And then the soul is returning back to the combined couple. And you see that it's one person now. See? And the raven, we still have the raven down here, which says, you never get rid of the dark. There's always another process to go through. There's always something new to learn. Love is a very important theme in alchemy. It binds the opposites together and helps to motivate the alchemist on their quest. The creation of the stone and the experience of the conjunctio is a feeling experience beyond description. That's why it's so hard for them to talk about it, to write about it. It's a felt ecstatic vision, a knowing of knowledge, a budding forth of wisdom, the feeling processes of alchemy. So, and the thing, this gets into the very esoteric aspects of alchemy. They say once the lapis is created, it projects itself and multiplies itself. So to me, that's like we get a new attitude or we get a new connection to ourselves, and people feel it. It's contagious. I had a spiritual experience when I was 16 once. I can't remember it now, but I totally knew who I was and what I was doing here. It was wonderful. And I went back to prep school, and girls, and I was very shy, girls kept coming up to me and telling me all their problems because they had a sense that I knew something. I didn't, but and then eventually that experience faded, and I had to find it on another level. So we all have those experiences of understanding something on that level. So the big conjunctio is with the divine, of course. And it's not that that's separate from our psychology. It's not. It comes out of the ground of our being, and we each have a relationship to the divine that is individual. It's not just Christ. Christ might really work for somebody, and Buddha might work for somebody, and Venus might work for somebody, and the Shiva might work. All these. There are millions of images of God, but that's what the biggest self is. It's each one of us has an individual experience and connection to the divine. Okay. So, this is Alex Gray. Anybody know Alex Gray's work? Yeah. So, Jung had a vision in 1944, which was when he was working on his major alchemical work. He was very, very ill, and he had a nurse who brought in food. And he had imagined that she was an old Jewish woman with a blue halo, and that he was at the wedding of Tiferet and Malkuth, that he was at the sacred wedding. And then he was at a Kabbalistic wedding, and he felt, I am the marriage. And he was in this incredible blissful space. And then it moved to the marriage of the Lamb in Jerusalem. And then he walked up a wide valley to a classical amphitheater, and there was the Hieros Gomos, the sacred marriage. And men and women were dancing, and there were flower-decked couches, and Zeus and Hera were consummating the mystic marriage from the Iliad. And night after night, he said, I floated in a state of purest bliss through around the images of all creation. And when he got well and he came out of that, he did not want to come back. Who would? But he had to come back and do another, whatever else he had to do. And that was 1944. He died in 1961. So this was one of the most profound, and this is when he was working on the Mysterium Conjunctionis, which is his huge book about the sacred marriage. Okay, so any thoughts or questions? to end. That was a quick 2 hours.